Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm Ukrainian Canadian. Today is June 17th, 2024, and let's get to the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? And we're gonna do a very quick map update today. There's a few things that we need to go over. And yeah, let's get to it. So let's talk about Kharkiv and the Russian incursion here since early May. So now there's some good news coming out of Luhansk, and you probably heard about it. The Ukrainians managed to surround Russians in this small little sector here. That is a chemical plant that the Russians took under their control. And now apparently there's about 400 to 500 Russian soldiers stuck here, unable to break out. And the Ukrainians managed to surround them. So now the good news is that some of these Russian soldiers have started surrendering. And essentially there's no way for them to be able to break out. The Ukrainians are confirming that they have locked in their positions and that they're essentially stuck here in this chemical plant. So this is going to be a big morale boost for the Ukrainians once they manage to capture these Russians, all of them, and it's going to be a big propaganda win for Ukraine as well. This is really necessary. And we know that essentially the Russian incursion in Kharkiv has been mostly a flop. Yes, they've been able to capture some villages here and there, but this wasn't the result that they were anticipating. So it's good to see that since essentially the first few days of their offensive here, they haven't been able to really push further than what they were able to take in about less than a week here. So this is really good news, and it's good to see that the Ukrainians are also able to counterattack, and possibly they could drive out the Russians out of Luhansk and other villages by the end of the summer. And the front line isn't that far away from the Russian border as well, so let's hope for some good news in nearby future in this sector. Another good news is in Kreminna, and that is in Serebryanskiy forest. So here, again, the battles have been very stagnant, not that they haven't been fierce, because the Ukrainians have been fighting very, very hard here to be able to defend this area. It's been very difficult, and the Russians are also putting a lot of pressure around Kreminna. But the Serebryanskiy forest has been a difficult battleground because of how dense it is in terms of forestry. But also, to be honest with you guys, it would be a lot to call this a forest because it looks like the Battle of Verdun in World War I. Everything is decimated. There's really no forest there anymore, but both sides are really well entrenched. There's a lot of trench networks, good defenses on both sides, so it's really difficult to make ground here. And it's good to see that the Ukrainians were able to gain some ground about 2.5 kilometers closer, let's say, towards Kreminna, and they took some positions back, which is really good news. Again, it's not like we're anticipating a breakthrough here, but it's good to see that the Ukrainians are able to counterattack and gain some ground, even in these difficult moments where Russia is really well, also has really good defenses here. So good development. Let's hope for some more Ukrainian gains in this sector in the next few weeks. But we also know that the Russians are putting pressure in the north. So also I believe the Ukrainians should be able to should drive out the Russians out of this sector as well. That is Terne, Yampolivka, Torske. This is also a very difficult battleground for the Ukrainians. So overall, good news for the Ukrainians here. Additionally, Chasiv Yar. So right now, the Ukrainians are still holding Chasiv Yar. Everything is stable. Yes, the Russians have made a small amount of gains here north of Bogdanivka, and they've also captured back Ivanivske. So that is the city that is kind of right before Bakhmut. The Ukrainians controlled about 70% in the last few weeks, but it was inevitable. What the most important now is really the battle for Chasiv Yar and holding the ground here. You can see that the Russians have been really trying to break through this kind of chain of forests and this canal that divides the city entrance from the outskirts of Chasiv Yar as well. So you can see that the Russians are really doing everything possible to break through, but their losses have been colossal in this sector in the last few months. Just in the last few weeks, I've seen dozens of videos of Russian armored convoys trying to storm Chasiv Yar and ultimately getting destroyed and obliterated by Ukrainian drones, artillery, and javelins. So this is really great news that the Ukrainians are able to hold the ground, and I'm not anticipating the Russians to have any breakthrough in Chasiv Yar in nearby future, especially once the Ukrainians will get F-16s. We know that's not going to be 100, but even a dozen can make a difference. The Ukrainians will be able to utilize different bombs, different missiles for various missions, and I believe that they could certainly prioritize this sector in Bakhmut to be able to really destroy Russian ammunition dumps and staging areas with F-16s. So we'll see how that develops, but overall the Ukrainians are holding strong with Chasiv Yar. Of course, the other very difficult front line for the Ukrainians is the northern Avdiivka sector. That is more Ocheretine sector. So this is the village that the Russians were able to capture about 2 months ago, more or less. And since then, they haven't been really able to drive out and have massive breakthroughs. So the battles right now are ongoing kind of at the outskirts of Ocheretine, the open fields. And I've talked about in the past that I'm anticipating the Russians to gain some ground here in the open fields because the Ukrainians don't really have defenses here. The true battles will be happening around the villages, right, where it's easier to defend. There's obviously more structures, more defenses. So this is where I think the Russians will be able to push towards, but it's nothing catastrophic. And I think that the Ukrainians are able to really hold on. And hopefully by the end of the summer, they will be able to maybe counterattack and drive out the Russians out of these small villages all the way up to Ocheretine. Who knows? So that remains to be seen. But of course, we know that the Russians won't give up. We know that their attitude towards human life is worse than for animals. They see their soldiers as expendables, as ground meat. And even if they lose 50,000 soldiers per month, that is no big deal for them. They will find another 50,000 easily. And that is the big problem right now, is that the Ukrainians simply cannot disregard human life. They are in the minority. They have to save lives. And so for the Russians, they are able to throw as much meat as they want. And they just wage a very unhuman war against the Ukrainians. So that is pretty much the update for today. Apart from that, some more battles, in the south of Zaporizhia, but nothing really has changed here in the Orikhiv and the Velika Novosilka direction. So that's the update for today with regards to the map. Additionally, I want to give a brief update with regards to the peace summit that occurred this weekend. And we know that now we have more details, and 80 countries have officially confirmed their position with regards to this war, and they support Ukraine's territorial integrity, and they have condemned Russia's aggression against Ukraine, which is really important because this is the very first time in history of this war that finally there was such a big summit with so many countries present, represented by their politicians, and they voiced an opinion. They took a position. So that's really important, and we see that the majority of the world, the majority of the West, supports Ukraine. They are condemning this war. They're condemning Russia for being the aggressor, and they confirm that Ukraine is indeed the victim here, which is really important. And also what I saw as a positive trend is that the West felt more confident and more decisive with its unity against Russia. That was really important. Remember, we talked about it last week when Putin came out right before the peace summit. That wasn't a coincidence, with a statement that he was really ready for peace talks, except, well, the only conditions were that Ukraine had to give up the entirety of Zaporizhia Oblast, the entirety of Kherson Oblast, the entirety of Donetsk Oblast and Luhansk Oblast, and also renounce from NATO membership forever, essentially, which obviously are ridiculous propositions. We know that Putin wasn't serious, and it would be even more ridiculous to believe that the Ukrainians would simply cede the territories that the Russians don't currently control and then put in danger millions of Ukrainian lives in the process. So, the West, seeing that, statement from Putin, just laughed at him. And a year ago, I would not have been surprised if they actually would say, Ukraine, think about it. Maybe Russia has a point, right? They would try to play into, maybe Ukraine, you should stop this war, right? There's been too much bloodshed, essentially forcing Ukraine to pay a price. And now you see that the West is not willing to force Ukraine to pay a price. They want Russia to pay a price because they started this war and they need to feel the consequences, which is something that I felt for the very first time with all these statements from various leaders, that is from Germany, France, Canada, United States, Finland, Poland. There was a lot of strong statements against Russia, and Russia wasn't present there, which is also very good because, again, we would expect the same BS statements from Russia, that it's Ukraine that started it. We're simply defending our territory, and if it wasn't for our attack on Ukraine, we would have been attacked first by Ukraine, right? So this is really positive as well, and we cannot, discount that either. So that's the video for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the update. I hope you enjoyed, the news for today. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think about any of the topics that I covered as well. If you enjoy my channel, please subscribe. please leave me a like if you enjoyed this video. It really helps to support this channel. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you, and Slava Ukraini.